And so if you have any questions during the time that I am presenting, I'm going to do my best to address them at the end, but I'm going to start screen sharing so that I could show you what our parent power looks like in action, all right? All right, so we already went through, like I said, these fancy sounding things, and my best title is Mom and Grandma. So what we're going to do with our time, right? I know that a lot of people want to know, like, what am I going to be learning, and what am I going to be able to take away? So I just say that up front. Here is what we're going to do with our time together. You're going to know the difference between advocacy and activism. Second, then I'm going to help you understand how to trust and use your parental guidance. That's going to be exciting. Third, we're going to be talking about how to connect those efforts with a larger audience, community action, right? And what does that look like? And then fourth, I want to talk to you guys about making sure your children recognize your actions as a vital part of their education journey and ongoing success. That intergenerational transfer of power so that we aren't leaving our children defenseless and helpless. We know that we're not going to live forever. And so we have to model and shape and train and develop things in them for lifelong skills. So let's start on advocate, right? What does that mean? Like, you hear these words, advocate, you hear these words, activist. Sometimes you're like, well, I don't know where I fit into that. And is that an activist or is that an advocate? So we're just going to go in and define what does that mean, right? So us as parents are natural advocates for our children, right? We were in the hospital with them. We gave birth to them. We watched them grow. We taught them how to eat, how to walk, and all of those other vital life skills that we did along the way. And so as a parent, you are the credible, trustworthy source of information for your child, right? And your family. You're the one that's there. You're the expert about your child. So you are able to talk about their needs, right? Based on what you know as their expert witness, as their credible authority on who they are. You know who they are. So you are able to talk about their needs, the needs of your children and family best. You know them best, right? And then, taking that a little bit further, we're looking at how we know about our children and our families best, but we also live in a neighborhood and a community, right? And me being a native San Diegan, I understand parts of San Diego really well that I went to school in, Gombers being one, right? But then because I moved away, I trust that the people that are in the neighborhood and community now know what's best now. So you, as the person that is living in the neighborhood, can look at the history and the pattern in the past and see ways that you can make sure that your community thrives. But it doesn't require someone that hasn't lived there and may not, fully understand your day-to-day happenings and experiences to be that expert. They can definitely help if they are willing to, right? When you're trying to speak up about the needs of your community. But you living in that neighborhood, living in that community, you know what's best, and your neighbors do as well. So that looks more like a little collective action. You are the right person, right? When I first meet parents, oftentimes, there's some nervousness. There's skill sets all across. And I say, bring what you have to the table, to the conversation, to the, figuring this out. Let's work through this together. There's no act too small. There's no act too big, right? We all can do what's best and advocate for our children, because that's what equity is. Equity is making sure each person has what he or she needs to thrive and be successful, right? It might not look like everybody having the same thing, because some people might need one thing while others need another, right? And so that doesn't mean you can't work together to build off of each other's skill and each other's talent to best unite and advocate for your children, right? So here I put on the side that instead of being fearful about what you can do, here are some things that you can do based off of knowing your child and family best, based off of knowing your neighborhood and community needs best, and based off of being the right person, right? We got to practice this till we master. So you see right here, you can inform, as an advocate, you can inform others about the best needs of your children and family. That is within your authority to do, right? You are the expert, credible witness about your child and family's needs. You can call others to action, talking about that collective neighborhood and community type of action that's going to push towards the goal that you guys see, right? You know what's best and you know how to do that and best in your neighborhood. And then you can also, as the right person, talk to trusted community leaders, elected officials, and others about issues and ask for their support. That is all a part of advocacy, right? So when you look at this circle, you see you in the middle, your children and your family, the neighborhood and community surrounding you, and then diplomacy right here, right? Informing people, speaking up, and asking for support of others. That is what advocacy looks like. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. And, I'm going to pause for a second to talk about, before we talk about activism, because my pursuit started in advocacy and ended in activism, right? So, I went to schools in San Diego, La Jolla, Point Loma. I spent my elementary and almost secondary, and then I got to Gompers when I was probably about 8th grade, right? And so then I graduated from there, went to University of San Diego. But at the same time, I worked for the San Diego Unified School District and early childhood education and special education. I then, was pursuing my master's degree. So I went to leave San Diego, growing my family, moved into Riverside County. And immediately I saw some issues when I entered my older children, who are now adults, into school. And they were based on hatred and racism. My children were targeted, name called, you name it. And when I found that the school was unwilling to protect them and keep them safe the way that I wanted to, I went ahead and removed them from that unsafe environment, right? Because I understood the education system from being a prior employee. I knew what they were obligated to do versus what they were doing. And I decided that I had the ability to educate my own children and keep them safe. So I entered them into a public charter school, homeschool program, personalized learning programs, and we were fine. As I had my now younger set of children who are in the K-12 education age, I thought about wow, there's a dual immersion program. I'm going to enter my children into that dual immersion program. And I think that I should probably, can you guys see me? Because if not, I'm going to stop screen sharing. So, okay, sorry about that. And so I entered them into that dual immersion program, and things were still the same. Now, I'm telling you, the generation gap between my second oldest daughter and my youngest daughter is 10 years, right? And so I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, if it hasn't changed, and it's been this length of time, we have a problem. No, you have a problem, because you need to be educating kids and making sure they're safe. So that's when I really started advocating, and then I kept getting fought, and so that's when I turned my advocacy into activism. Like, what can I pursue through the powers that I have, ethical, through legal powers that I have as a parent, and how can I get others involved? And that road led me to fight for other parents, which ultimately led me to this, what I do today. So here is where you see activism, right? With activism, like I said, it's different from advocacy, because in advocacy, you could be just, speaking on behalf of your child, informing others as that credible witness or source of information about your child and your family, engaging with others who are doing the same, speaking to the necessary parties, leaders, whatever. But when you move into activism, it is formed around a campaign, right? Usually some type of injustice that has been taking place, either to you and your children, to your community, or something that you just want to get involved in. So we see that as a campaign-driven type of thing, or you even form an initiative to be active around, right? Like to bring forth social and political change. So again, I like to think about, reminding you that the needs of your children and family best, right? You know the needs of your neighborhood and community best. You are the right person, right? I'm going to bring up an example. We used to see those, how those little commercials used to come out where they would say, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Colgate or Crest over Colgate, right? Well, what if I like Colgate? Okay. And I want to use Colgate, but I see that commercial every day. And then I start hearing people talk a lot about Crest versus Colgate, and I start to change my mind, even though I knew Colgate worked for me, right? Now, what if I ended up getting persuaded by that commercial and by those who are surrounding me that, you know what, you should use Crest and dump the Colgate. And I started to use it and I didn't like it. And I'm thinking to myself, I really prefer the toothpaste that I prefer. And I know this might sound silly, but just think about what I'm saying. But I decided to change my mind because someone said, and dentists are considered experts, right? 4 out of 5 dentists prefer Crest over Colgate. So I better try it out. And then I noticed other people, my peers around me, were using it. And so maybe there's something to this. And you continue to say, I'm going to go ahead and try to use the Crest even after you tried it and didn't like it, right? And there's something in you every day saying, I don't know, why am I doing this? I don't even like it, right? I should just trust my own shopping instinct or whatever. This is a silly example. Now, what if you didn't change back to what worked for you and your family, and then months down the line or years down the line, you didn't see any improvements, and then you found out, wow, they only asked 5 dentists. How would you feel, right? They only asked 5 dentists and got 4 of them to say that, and you changed your whole life and just threw away everything that you felt you could feel, intuition and instinct about what was going on, and you decided to change, and now you find out it was not even a change worth making. So I want you to know that you are the right person, right? And you do know what's best for your children and your community. With that being said, when there are injustices that take place, you are able to form a campaign around that. Say, for instance, we want to eradicate zero tolerance practices in schools. Well, that's a good cause for parents to be able to form a campaign around, right? And use all of the skills and the information, the data that we have about our experiences, what is taking place with our children, and then bring about some type of social and or political change. You can pursue justice on behalf of your family, neighborhood, and community. I talked to you guys about my journey. And how my children were mistreated and targeted and things were not rectified. So I began to pursue justice, not only for my children, but the other children that were possibly harmed in the same way. And I didn't allow people to tell me, well, you're not their parent. I didn't allow that. What I said was, I am here to represent the parents that are not present, right? And I'm here to represent the traditionally marginalized, underrepresented, and not respected and listened to parents. And so you are going to respect my dialogue and my conversation on their behalf, right? And it is good to engage in your activism, people within the community, right? And when they don't want to support if you're talking about local elected officials and you're engaging with them, they need to be held accountable, right? So that's how we look at even bringing the pressure, like, hey, we voted for you. How are we going to have that mutual beneficial relationship of you receiving our vote and you also respecting and hearing our voices? You often have to remind representatives that they elect you. You elected them and they represent you, right? And don't assume that they understand all the issues either. I'll tell you that. We can't assume that they know everything that's going on. So it's always best to bring that information in a diplomatic way, right? Give a little bit of time for some action to be taking place. Ask for a formal resolve. How can we formally resolve this situation in the community that is causing social and political injustices to continue to take place? Talk about that, right? Ask community leaders, pastors, churches, people that you trust, right? People that you trust that will pick up the mantle or the banner with you and pursue that social and political change, all right, to address those injustices. And so that's the difference. As you can see, this bubble is still the same, where we have you in the middle, children and family, your children and your family that you know best, right? The neighborhood and community where you live in and you want to see thrive. But here, instead of the diplomacy, we have that action piece, keyword action and activism, right? So let's go to the next one. All right, I was just talking to you about trusting, and I'm going to take a sip of my water. Trusting your parental guidance, right? Usually this is the most, forgotten or misunderstood thing that happens when there's some type of issues that are taking place, is because we know a lot of well-meaning people, right? But they don't know our children best. So sometimes their guidance can be off about our children. Or sometimes we go to people that have children, but they're adults and they may be far removed from what is taking place currently in the conditions of education currently, right? And so while they're well-intentioned, they may not be as well-informed, right? And they can grant some guidance, but really at the end of the day, you need to see what is taking place with your child and how to trust your parental intuition and instinct and guidance best, right? As you can see, there is this believe in yourself as a parent. No one knows your child better than you. There is no better advocate for their needs, and that's granted to us by the Pediatric Congenital Heart Association, but it still rings true whether we're talking about medical issues, right? Whether we're talking about education needs, whatever it may be, you are that authority, credible, trustworthy source of information for your child and your family and yourself, right? So I want you to think about, sometimes children may have some issues and you might start recognizing like something's off. And I might have went to the teacher and asked the teacher, but the teacher's saying everything is okay. Maybe my child doesn't have the ability to externalize what they're internalizing, right? So I need to be paying attention to those physical and or behavioral and emotional cues that indicate there's something going on with my child. And then trust your parental guidance and intuition despite what other people are telling you. And if your children are at the age where they're able to vocalize these things and speak up about them, make sure you listen to them, right? Have them, really, a lot of times people have different forms of expression. And that's why I like the fact that the First Amendment values and respects and protects freedom of expression, the freedom of varying ideals, right? And so we need to understand that even if I'm a vocal parent, which I am, a lot of people know that I'm vocal and I'm going to speak, right? My daughter or my son may not be that way, right? And so what is their form of expression? Well, my daughter's form of expression is art, And so when I see like her art change or she's like, I'm not really feeling like painting right now. I'm not feeling it. I know that there is something that she's maybe going through and we need to talk about that, right? Let me try to figure out what is going on and how to help her express herself. But these are things that I want you to be paying attention to, because this actually happened to my son, where he wasn't very vocal and he didn't know how to be as a kindergarten, first grade, second grader, but he was pulling his hair out. And that's how I knew that there was something unsafe, toxic, or wrong, right? And he would pull patches of his hair, come home from school, and patches of his hair were missing. And I'm like, what is going on? You know? And even though the adults in the environment told me like, no, everything's fine, I knew to trust my parental guidance and intuition and instinct about what I saw and what I needed to do for my child, right? And so you see where you can recognize if your child is stressed. Physical symptoms may include a decreased appetite or changing in eating habits, right? Headache. Older kids I've talked to that have had issues that they weren't able to externalize. They were being harassed, they were being bullied, they were being threatened, and it shouldn't have been taking place in the school environment, and definitely shouldn't have been taking place with educators in the school environment. That is not okay. They were entrusted to keep them safe and not to harm them. And so they were having headaches and nightmares. That's on there, right? Sometimes if you have a second grader, which I know that many of you parents, even though you know have high schoolers and middle schoolers, you also have little ones that are entering into kindergarten, first, second grade, they might start wetting. Like, what? Pay attention to that, right? Eating and controlling whether you defecate or urinate, it is all that they can control sometimes. And so there's signs in that. If you see those physical symptoms, pulling hair, I told you about that, right? Sleep disturbances, right? Either sleeping too much or not. Upset stomach, this happens a lot. If you have a child that's coming home every day with an upset stomach, nausea, and just wants to go to bed and like dreads waking up in the morning and, you know, going where they need to go, then you need to make sure you secure them first and then figure out, make sure they're safe first, physically and mentally safe. I'm not an expert in medicine, so I would say seek out mental and medical professionals for that. Definitely safety, security. Then you go advocate. And if that has to escalate into activism, you do that, right? Here are the emotional or behavioral symptoms. You may see anxiety, worry. Some kids bite their nails, so you can tell that they have this anxiety, right? Not able to relax, right? And we're talking about when these just suddenly arise or you start seeing these things take place. Anger, right? Some of those temper tantrums might be from stress that they have about a situation where they don't feel naturally safe, where they don't feel welcomed and secure, where they don't feel that their voices are being heard, or they sense some type of injustice is taking place. I can tell you that children understand justice in a way that we don't understand that they do, right? If you have two children and they're around the same age and you give one something that you didn't give the other, you'll see them fight for justice really quick, okay? You'll see them pursue equality really quick. And you will not be able to understand that one child needed something other different than the other child, because they haven't really gotten that full understanding of equity. They know equality and they know how to pursue justice. And so we need to be making sure that we recognize those behavior and emotional patterns and trust your parental guidance, even if there's well-meaning people that are telling you, no, that I don't see it, or it's okay, or that no, trust your parental guidance. Make sure you get your child to safety, security, then go to advocacy, then activism, whichever route you want to take on that. So I talked to you guys about what is that going to look like, right? And what does that look like when you have multiple skill sets, right? This is how we engage with the community. When you have multiple skill sets, I probably am the rebel, somebody else might be the social change agent or the reformer. And you know what? All of those work together very well, right? But we have to recognize those activist social skill sets or whatever skill sets people bring, there's people that are quiet that say, you know what, Christina, I don't want to speak up, but I'm more than willing to walk through the neighborhoods if you want to go canvas and hand out flyers. Okay, come on, let's go, right? Or I'm more than willing to email other parents or go seek out other parents and contact them via email or text message. Hey, that's welcome. Let's do it. We're all working together, right? Or, just seeking out those community people that they may have observed or recognized will be good for a campaign or a rally that you're forming, right? You want everybody to come together and use what they have. And as you use them, you master them over time, right? We don't expect any perfect people to come to the table because we're not perfect. We just want all hands on deck when it comes to social justice issues, when it comes to education and learning justice issues, and when it comes to just overall justice for the community and for the children, and so that we thrive. So if you look at this, you kind of can get a guide of, you see that word diplomatic there, articulate, grounded. That's good quality. Bring that citizen to the table, right? You're going to need that rebel, courageous, risk taker, brave, right? Probably has a Che Guevara t-shirt on. I guess I wore the wrong shirt then, right? Bring that person to the table. Look at what they're able to add to the overall mission, right? Don't exclude anyone who is able to bring what they have. There's a wealth exists in more than just financial resources. Wealth exists in, wisdom, knowledge, skill. So don't feel like because someone has financial resources, they're wealthier than you, right? You may have the wisdom and the knowledge that they don't have, and you can all work together. So I don't want anybody to feel intimidated because that often happens at times and it makes us pull back. But we need to stand in our power and say, this is who I am. This is what I can do. And this is what I want to help out with, or I need help out with, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. The social change agent, charismatic, strategic, good communicator, right? You see all of these things. And the reformer, we need all of this, right? Becoming active. So look around in your neighborhood, your community. If you know people throughout the state that are willing to help, do that. And that's how you will really be able to build momentum around your campaign, around your rallying, your activism, and your justice pursuits. Here is more information about how these work together. And we talked about what's inside, but I really wanted to really talk about what's ineffective, right? We want to eliminate things that are ineffective. And then you can determine whether they're ineffective in your area or not. As you can see, this is the Practical Strategist Social Movement Empowerment Project from 1990. So it is dated, but still relevant today. So I wanted to just introduce this to you so you could understand what may not be working in your movement for learning justice, for social and political justice, what to maybe watch out for and eliminate, right? We see these various roles in the center coming together and working together with things that are going to be powerful and, collective action. But then we see right here, well, it's ineffective for the reformer to promote minor reforms. What does that mean, right? If people know them as the person that really is the driver behind big reforms, and then to go ask them to spend their time on something that's not in their wheelhouse, and they probably have elevated from that, is not going to be the best use of their time, and it's not going to be the way to keep them engaged. Just being really honest, right? And so you want to see what a person's abilities are and really hone in on that, right? So let's see here. If you look at what's ineffective for the change agent, right? Ignores personal needs of activists. Well, you're not going to really get a lot of change if you're ignoring the people that are on your team or even yourself. I'll tell you that you can burn out quick. You need to be paying attention to those personal needs, look over here to the left. And this is just an example that I just am showing you so that you'll have a visual of what this looks like. Self-identifies as being on the fringe. Well, sometimes, it isn't helpful to say, I'm the rebel, I demand a meeting, you need to let me in to an elected official, right? That might not be the best course of action, right? So if you self-identify like I'm the rebel, you might not get taken seriously instead of just identifying who you are authentically as a person in your name, and then coming in with your skill set and utilizing it in the way that it should be, strategically, tactfully, and powerfully, right? Here we have the citizen, right? If you have both extremes, those citizens that are just naive and don't know, and then those citizens that are like maybe really extreme and they see everything in just one vacuum, there's no balance there. Both of those are not going to promote the balance and the justice that you seek. They are useful in some ways, but we're not going to talk about that here. So right now we are going to our number 4, right? And I want to bring up this personal information and experiences that I have. A lot of times when people see me, doing some activist work, either at a peaceful protest or a rally or meetings, they see my children with me. And they ask me like, you think it's okay to bring your children? I say, absolutely. And here's why, right? I want my children, first of all, to understand the importance of their own education and why we fight. I want them to also have the skill, tools, and ability to effectively fight without emotion. A lot of times the things that we do is data-driven, doesn't require people to get angry and crying and all of that. Like, I want to show them how to utilize diplomacy in action, and they get to see it modeled in front of them. So that is like that intergenerational transfer of power, okay? They get to watch, they get to be involved, and they have a hand in their own success and in their own fight for success and in their own fight for the pursuit of justice and success, right? So it's very important that they be able to participate and have an active role. You see kids right here, one's on the mic, one's holding signs, making signs, and they're all involved, right? And we're talking about in a safe situation. There might be some things where you might feel like, well, this rally or this protest was supposed to be peaceful, but it might turn out a little bit, like a riot. And hey, they do that too. But I probably wouldn't think it's a good idea to take your kids to that for a learning experience, right? So here is something on the right that I want you to be looking at. The future of social activism, education activism, all of that really happens with the majority of 20 to 28 years old. So even if they don't learn the skill from you, when they move out and go to college, they're probably going to be a part of a campaign or a protest. So it's best to really help them to understand what that looks like along the way. The drivers of the majority of the social justice movements in the US right now are youth and young adults. And it has been historically that way, showing them the right way to fight, supporting them in that effort, explaining why you're fighting for their learning justice or social justice so that they're not afraid. The first time, my son went to go to the rally, he says, I'm scared. And I said, well, why are you scared? Let's talk about that, because we're fighting for your education. And, we went over to Los Angeles for the education justice rally. And there was like 1,500 kids there. And as soon as he saw there's 1,500 kids, there's a marching band, and he did it. And then he said, after we were done, can we do this again tomorrow? And so allowing him to be able to see and working him through that fear helped him to be able to know and anticipate what it was we were going to do, right? And why we do these things. And how having him see other children his age there helped him to say, you know what? This is very important. We're fighting for our quality education. We're not just wasting our time. No one's out here, there's nothing bad happening or illegal happening. We are fighting the good fight for our quality education. So I just wanted to bring that in so that you can understand, about the young adults and youth being vital. They already understand justice. Don't underestimate them. They have a good way of leading others into organized events through social media. You see that here. They're able to utilize the internet to do a lot more than we can, right? Some of my youth say, hey, how about we bring this flyer to TikTok? And I say, go ahead, because I don't understand TikTok. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, but I do welcome you. And so I supervise that, and they do an amazing job with that. Even fundraising events, boycott support, all of that. Don't underestimate the youth and young adults. We definitely want to be transferring skill, talent, and power and allow them to utilize that by practicing. So we have come at the end of the presentation, and I want to allow for any questions that may have come up during the time that I was speaking about this whole thing. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Sorry, I'm still getting technologically savvy. All right. So I see some questions in the chat, and I think I answered those. Let me see. Yeah, I think I answered those. Are there any questions that I have not